Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Naruto Shippuden episode review. This one's going to be for episode 464, Ninshu The Ninja Creed. And yeah, we go from canon into another filler arc type thing, but again, it's one of those ones where I think it's going to be really interesting, and this first episode I thought was actually really good. Um, while last time out we focused on Kaguya's history, this time we are focusing on Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths, and basically kind of the history of what happens, post the sealing away of Kaguya, versus basically how do we get to the point where like ninjas exist in the world, Indra, Ashura, that kind of reincarnation cycle continuing, and the battles between the reincarnations. And the story is framed in the Sage of Six Paths telling this to Hashirama and the other Hokages, but primarily it's just a way to kind of get this story to us. So straight away we start out with Gamamaru and Hagoromo talking a little bit. He reveals another one of his prophecies that someone with blue eyes will bring a great change to the world at a certain point in time. And obviously I think it's what it's hinting at is just a really, really, really early prediction of Naruto obviously being able to do this. And I suppose it's interesting that the Sage of the Six Paths even knew to some extent that something would happen in the future and there'd be another calamity and stuff like that would be caused to happen. But obviously after this, he decides that he's going to travel the world, initially with two purposes, but it later becomes three. The first one is to find places for the nine-tailed beasts to kind of rest, I suppose, once he's dead, which we do see later on in the episode. And then the second one is to basically restore the land that basically he and his brother and mother ruined during their battle to seal her away. So it's this kind of just this arc of trying to somewhat make amends for kind of what happened. He is kind of allowed the world to be free because of sealing away Kaguya, but because of the nature of that battle, he did cause a decent amount of the damage that happened here. So it was very interesting to me, like, going into this kind of like, I was kind of thinking, was this going to be the episode or the arc where we get explained where, ninja hand signs and using chakra, the elemental natures of chakra and stuff like that, and actually like using it as an offensive kind of form came into play here. And based on the preview for next episode, it seems like the way they're doing that is that Indra is the one who comes up with the idea of using chakra in that way and creating offensive techniques with it, whereas the Sage of Six Paths here is actually very much against using his power like full stop. Outside of, I suppose, enhanced strength and stamina, he's not really using his powers in these episodes here. So it's very interesting to see that he doesn't want to use his powers in that way ever again. He wants to kind of create an era of peace. He wants to create just a situation where everyone can kind of be bonded together under a kind of singular creed, which is obviously where Ninshu comes from later. And it's kind of interesting where it comes from, in that it's basically, he comes across this bridge, he needs to get across, and he kind of says to himself, okay, this is the first thing I'm going to do to help rebuild the world. This bridge obviously was previously broken basically by me, so I'm going to fix it here. We didn't get introduced to this character, a thief called Futami, I believe is the name. They only said it, I think, once, but really interesting character as the first, I suppose, non-Otsutsuki to kind of get chakra, and making him important as like the guy who kind of led Hagoromo down this path of kind of becoming the leader of this kind of, organization, basically, this creed, and actually teaching people about these things. That it came from the kind of friendship that eventually developed between this guy kind of going out on this kind of quest for redemption versus this thief who just kind of wanted to make money. And it was a very slow part of the episode where they just focus a lot on just building the bridge, picking up trees, bringing it here. But I appreciate that they didn't rush through this history and that they actually gave time and developed that, like, Futami, you really saw him uh, like really come to terms with, like, no, I'm making a difference here. And then when the bridge is eventually finished, like, the whole time he's thinking, like, okay, I'll help you build it, but I'm going to destroy it the second it's built just so I can get rid of you. Um, but the second it's built, he's like, I don't want to do that because everyone is so happy. Everyone came together, as opposed to this kind of very selfish thing I was doing where I was tricking people and stealing from them to, try and get them across the bridge. Now we've actually built the bridge, everyone can go across, everyone's friendly. I kind of want to do that some more. You have kind of pointed this out to me through helping me, and that will change things. And so he goes off with him as his initially just a kind of traveling kind of companion, just like, I want to help do this sort of stuff, and because Hagoromo is going to around the world to try and restore things and find these locations. And then eventually we get this really nice scene where they're just around a campfire and they just kind of talk about what's going on. He basically reveals that he was the one who caused a lot of this, so he's trying to make amends for that. And that while he doesn't want his powers to ever be used for violence again, he does see the potential for his powers to be somewhat helpful. And so he gives Futami the ability to use chakra. Now, I suppose the explanation behind what his goal was here was a little weird in that I get what they're going for in that, like, he's just saying, look, I'm giving you the power to, I suppose, sense, to some extent, manipulate your chakra, and this will give you a greater connection with the other people around you because you can sense chakra and have this connection to it now. And he basically said that initially Ninshu was meant to be this kind of thing, that through the power of chakra, everyone could bond together and to some extent understand everyone. In regards to actually giving anyone powers, they potentially hinted that it gave everyone, like, slightly enhanced strength and stamina so that they could accomplish all of the things that they needed to do. In that, once he got to the point where he had a lot of followers, Hagoromo, and everyone had chakra, it made sense that he would send them out to kind of spread the word of Ninshu, and that they would be able to build the bridges and do all this sort of stuff themselves, but only if they had, the power of chakra to make that to some extent possible. Now, they didn't really explain exactly if chakra actually gave them any powers beyond just a connection to everyone, but it was really interesting just how it came together, how the relationship between Hagoromo and Futami, I think that's his name, I'm probably saying it wrong, that it didn't just help Futami in terms of like really understanding, like, that being a thief is not the right thing to do and having this turnaround, that it also helps to point out to Hagoromo, like, kind of what he can do. The influence he can have is not just rebuilding things, but also he can help reunite this world torn apart as well by what's going on, not just by rebuilding the world, but by rebuilding the bonds between everyone and having everyone work together to help rebuild and eventually get to an era where this power that he's holding within himself, the power of the nine-tailed beasts, he can send them out to various locations, and if everyone is under the same creed, they can live harmoniously with the tailed beasts, and there will be no need for any kind of strife in the world. And it was actually a really emotional moment where you kind of get the flash forward to him on his deathbed, making the decision to finally distribute the tailed beasts to their locations, which he did find over time, with the explanation that once he found a location specific to each one, they built, like, a temple there that would eventually, like, guard over and protect that tailed beast once they were put there. And then when he was dying, he sent them to that location. And the speech that he gives at the end is really nice and kind of somewhat emotional. He's just saying that, like, my time is up, but I'm going to send you off to these places, and over time you will, your forms will change. There will eventually be a point where you do become one again. And I hope that when that time comes, you will have been guided down the path where you know what true strength is. Now, obviously, he kind of reflects that, like, that ended up not happening and that everyone There eventually became people that wanted to use the tailed beast for evil, but that obviously Naruto, he's already sensing. We've already had that moment. He has been the one to remember all the names, know the names of all of the tailed beasts, and kind of bring them together, kind of, as one to some extent. He was given the power, a little bit of the power of every single tailed beast, but it's not the 10 tails monster form that Naruto has kind of helped to bring them together as one in the right way and kind of understand what true strength is. And they focused on Kurama kind of crying at this kind of statement of like the Sage of Six Paths dying, and he obviously, the Nine Tails, is the one who most needed to know what true strength was. But just a very nice moment. They kind of quickly flash forward, and then he says, "Okay, now back to my story," and the organization is growing and stuff like that. He mentions how he returned to his home village and made that the kind of centerpiece of the headquarters of Ninshu, and he married, had 2 sons, but his wife died shortly after giving birth to Ashura, who is the younger of the two, and they were really friendly at first, and he eventually, now reflecting on it, is aware that Zetsu was always there in the background manipulating Indra and Ashura apart to eventually, have this massive plan to resurrect Kaguya come back into place. So it's nice that he's now aware of that the one thing he didn't account for was the third son of his mother, who, I suppose, given the nature of his creation, you wouldn't never call really Zetsu their brother, Hamura and Hagoromo, but he wasn't aware until just very recently that Zetsu was even a thing, but that he's kind of been the mastermind behind everything. That the one blind spot that Hagoromo had was just that Zetsu was out there manipulating things to get Kaguya back. And we just kind of end the episode with the setup that, okay, we're going to focus more on Indra and Ashura next, but by the time we get to the next episode, I assume Hagoromo will be in it early on, but we'll then cover the parts after he's died afterwards as well, and we'll move more away from Hagoromo's story into Indra and Ashura's story, and I would assume they will briefly touch on like them being reincarnated for the first time, and kind of try and suggest, is that like a normal thing in the Naruto universe, or is it something that Zetsu helped manipulate to happen, that like he forced them to be so against each other that it was this hatred that spread through the generations, or is it going to reveal that like everyone in the Naruto universe is reincarnated at some point? That's going to be interesting to see covered, but I can't see it going on like a massive amount, in that like I can't see them going all the way through like a ton of different generations, getting to like Madara and Hashirama and stuff like that. I really don't think that's going to be the case. But I'm interested, especially the preview kind of showing us them at various stages of growing up. Indra eventually bringing in like physical attacks using chakra, and that's what changes the nature of Ninshu, and that's what makes it into more of what we know of ninjas at this point in time. So how exactly Hagoromo reacts to that, and that he's always been against using powers in that way, is that with the manipulation of Zetsu kind of what turns the two against each other, that's kind of what separates Indra from his loving father and brother, that Zetsu has kind of planted these seeds in his mind, kind of like Orochimaru did in the early stages of Naruto with Sasuke and stuff like that. Is this kind of what we're going to see here with Indra? And then they've already set it up that Ashura is very much like Naruto, always kind of chasing after, in his case, his brother Indra, but in Naruto's case, his friend Sasuke. That he's always behind, but he wanted to catch up. So should be a fun story. It's always interesting that we've known about these characters for a while now: Kaguya, Hagoromo, Indra, Ashura, but now finally actually getting some focus on them as characters and knowing them a bit better. It's really interesting, especially the Sage of Six Paths, who has always been this kind of legendary figure that's just been spoken of as like, here are the 5 key points he did in the Naruto universe, but now we actually know him as a character, and that like No, he actually brought chakra into humans for a specific reason and had nothing to do with like really power and techniques and stuff like that. It was a way to connect everyone together because he wanted peace after a kind of all these horrendous battles that he had. So overall, pretty good episode. It was, as I said, fairly slow at the start, but I did to some extent appreciate that because it added a lot of character to him, to his relationship with the thief, and then gradually introducing that a lot of the people who eventually ended up following him started off from like a bad position, whether they were thieves or just people who were kind of unwilling to initially help out, and then they all came together to help accomplish this goal of eventually like bring peace back into the world. It is this kind of almost humanitarian group initially right now, nothing to do with power or anything like that, but it is this kind of situation where he knows that if he just doesn't put any planning into it and he dies, those tail beasts are just this kind of ticking bomb waiting to go off. So he has to put some sort of a plan in place for them. And I really like that. I think some of the stuff here explains some of the kind of confusing aspects of like some continuity moments before, and helped kind of put those back into line. But there's still a lot of time to go. So I was aware we're at least getting 2 or 3 more episodes of this Indra Ashura flashback, but I'm not exactly sure. I don't think the scheduling stuff has come out past like the next 2 weeks, but we'll wait and see. So yeah, that's basically been the review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. How did you like this origin story of Ninshu, Chakra in humans, and Hagoromo, Indra Ashura? But other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.